Your name could appear here before the 10 worst songs of 2024. Just be in the Overdose tier before December 10. Plus, other tiers get an early access watch party, a bonus worst song, and more. Support The Habit at patreon.com/dosabuckley. Music festivals. The time-honored tradition of consuming music the way God intended. By standing in a muddy, piss-soaked field for 2 or 3 days with thousands of drug addicts, being moments away from heat stroke at all times and getting urine trench foot, all for the privilege of seeing 2 bands you really like, 4 bands you kinda like, 6 bands you pretend to like, and 10 bands you've never heard of, but if asked, you're gonna tell everyone you've been their biggest fan for years. My favorite music festival story someone told me was that they went to Osheaga one year to see Bon Iver. Cool guy, I know. And while singing along, they were shushed by a woman who was reading a book beside them. Honestly, with everything I described, if you can't afford to go to a music festival, for a simulation of it, just go to any major city and ride their public transit for a couple of hours while listening to Spotify. You'll experience very similar sights and smells. But anyway, while we seem to have finally gotten past comparing every music fest to Fyre Fest whenever something goes wrong, 2024 had a number of moments I would call festival fuck-ups that I thought would be fun to look back at. We start with perhaps the winner for the biggest rip-off of the year, the Lucidity Festival. It's sort of a poor man's Burning Man, a Dollar General Coachella, described on Wikipedia as a transformational festival. It's a modern hippie fest where they have folk music, spoken word artists, performance artists. So some guy sticks a spoon up his ass and digs a hole in the sand to represent the struggle in Darfur or some fucking shit. They have a bunch of DJs for the people who like MDMA more than THC, and of course a bunch of vendors selling artisanal bullshit. I know, I've made it sound so appealing, so this next part is going to be very shocking to hear, I'm sure. But they announced this year that they wouldn't be able to put on the festival due to unforeseen last-minute changes and requirements imposed by the Santa Barbara County. Apparently, those fascist fire marshals changed the occupancy limits for the area. And in the true spirit of being organized by a bunch of old hippies, they said the money you spent on your tickets was already all gone, and they would not be able to give any refunds. Apparently, tickets were anywhere from $50 to $250. So, the people who spent that were basically up Salsapuedes Creek without a paddle. One person would be really happy with that joke, and they're definitely not watching this. A couple people on Reddit mentioned that they were successful in issuing chargebacks on their credit cards, but others mentioned that they were not able to go this route because they'd bought their tickets over a year ago and passed their card issuer's time limit for when you can get a refund. So, I mean, the festival was called Lucid. I'm guessing the people who got ripped off are wide awake now. We move on from California to Florida and the Shell Shock 2 Metal Festival. Like 2 weeks before the event was scheduled to happen, they lost a few bands, including their headliner, a group named Evergreen Terrace. Yes, Simpsons fans, they are named after the street Homer and his family live on, but no, they aren't Oakley Dokley, the all-Flanders theme metal band, and yes, that was a real thing. Anyway, why'd they pull out? Well, turns out the show had booked a special guest that a few bands weren't overly thrilled to be associated with. A man who, I suppose one might associate with a certain type of metal, mostly lead. Kyle Rittenhouse. Yes, the young man who, at the age of 17, had his mommy drive him across state lines to help protect businesses during a BLM protest and shot 3 people, killing 2 of them in what was eventually ruled self-defense in a court of law. Since then, he's become a right-wing hero, appearing at various Turning Point USA events, although he did initially support Ron Paul for president, claiming that Trump was too soft on the Second Amendment, and got so bullied by people like Cat Turd on Twitter that he took it all back like a day later, because that's how strong his convictions are. A fucking moron who named himself after the excrement from a feline's anus was able to bully him into changing his tune. Anyway, why was Kyle Rittenhouse a special guest at a metal music event? One that, by the way, was in support of soldiers with PTSD. So, you know, people who have nightmares over the people they've had to shoot during their career as a trained soldier. Not people who gleefully make a living off the praise they receive for shooting civilians with skateboards. He's not a real soldier, he just LARPed as one once. And I don't think blubbering like a big fat pussy in a courtroom is particularly metal. And I'd be asking this if it was a liberal guest too. I don't think Greta Thunberg should be booked for a metal show either. Unless she's in a Swedish black metal band I'm not aware of. But anyway, 3 other bands pulled out, all issuing similar statements that, while they very much supported raising money for troops, they weren't interested in being part of basically a political rally. And the organizers, who were going to placate Evergreen Terrace by canceling Kyle's appearance, then turned around and said, "The liberal woke mob is trying to cancel us," and tried to claim that Evergreen Terrace wasn't that popular anyway. Guys, you booked them as the headliner. Bold strategy to go, "Actually, our headliner and the 3 other bands we booked and sold tickets for sucked anyway." They were able to get a new headliner at the last minute. Sick TX, a Slipknot cover band. So now, the headliner is a tribute to a band who, by the way, the lead singer is a Bernie Sanders supporter and who is very pro-COVID vaccine, suggesting that he wouldn't be entirely against vaccine passports for concerts. Haha, that'll show those wokies. We move on to another festival that had an issue with bands dropping out, but this time for less controversial reasons. The All-American Rejects decided that they would move along from the When We Were Young festival because, quote, "There's been a management change within the WWWY operation, and they are no longer able to accommodate us in the previously agreed upon lineup." It's no dirty little secret that basically the gimmick of this year's When We Were Young Fest was that each band wouldn't just play their hits, they'd instead play a full album. AAR, as I call them, I'm a big reject head, they didn't want to do this. They just wanted to play a greatest hits set. And the management said, "No, you have to play your self-titled album in full." So, they walked. If I haven't already been downvoted as shit for that last bit, let's see who else we can offend. Am I the only one that thinks that's a terrible gimmick for a festival? For a show where you're catering to your own fans? Sure. But for a festival where you've got 10,000 people who know 3 of your songs, when Jimmy Eat World comes out, they expect to hear The Middle. They don't have any interest in hearing whatever the fuck If You Don't, You Don't, Get It Faster, or Cautioners is. But that's what they played during their set. So, here's a sentence I thought I'd never say. I side with the All-American Rejects on this one. I don't know how well the album's only gimmick went over with the audiences this year, but it looks like they're already changing it for 2025. They've announced that headliner Blink-182 will be performing songs from a bunch of their albums. But hey, at least they've actually announced lineups for next year before asking for money. The famous Vans Warped Tour announced this year that it will be returning after a brief 4 or 5 year hiatus, and put up a pre-sale for tickets. $230 for general admission for the 2-day event, $450 for the VIP. Except, they haven't announced a single fucking band. And hey, $250 for 2 days, when it costs that much to see Oasis begrudgingly play for an hour and a half, that's not bad. But you have no fucking idea who's going to be there. And maybe the pre-sale will determine that. Like, if they sell enough tickets, well, then they'll get The Offspring and Blink-182. Though probably not if they're already doing WWWY in 2025. But if they don't sell enough tickets, the headliners will be Mustard Plug and Real Big Fish. And hey, I like Mustard Plug as much as the next guy. There's no fucking way you know a guy who likes Mustard Plug. But anyway, I wouldn't pay $230 to see them. I paid 60 Canadian to see Clutch and the Sword like 2 years ago. That's $42 in freedom bucks. And I didn't have to stand in a field or wait 30 minutes to throw a piss in the world's most disgusting Johnny on the spot. $230 is a lot of money for nothing more than the promise that you'll be standing next to some 46-year-old wearing Jinko jeans and reeking of Axe body spray, peppermint vape, and desperation to regain his lost youth, with no idea what the fuck you're going to be listening to. But if you're wondering, how the fuck do they get away with that? The answer is because idiots are willing to gamble on it. The first 2 dates are already sold out. So, if you're one of the, tens of thousands of people who dropped a minimum of $230, plus maybe booked hotels, arranged travel for those shows in DC and California, and the lineup turns out to be hot snail secretions on cold crackers, you only have yourself to blame. But I suppose losing a few bucks is better than losing your life. 2024 marked the second year in a row that someone died at Burning Man. In 2023, a 32-year-old man overdosed at Burning Man? Oh, real shocker. And this year, a 39-year-old woman was found dead on the Sunday morning that kicks off the week-long event. The silver lining? She was spared a week at Burning Man. Yeah, that's the joke I ended on. Dark comedy's back, baby.